Welcome, everyone. See folks starting to arrive. Welcome. So glad you're here. Hello, hello. Oh, I see Miriam McKinney. Welcome. We'll just give it a couple moments for people to pop into the rooms. If you want to go ahead and share your name and where you're coming from, that would be great. I'm in Minneapolis right now, but normally I'm in Northern Michigan. Oh, hey, Dylan. Glad you're here. Randy. Hi, Randy and Mary, Betty. Awesome. Ah, Norma. I won't read everyone's name because that will not be helpful. But welcome, everyone. It looks like we're kind of studying in numbers, so I'll go ahead and get going for the sake of the evening. But it is so great to have everyone here and to welcome you to this special event celebrating the life and the legacy of the one and only Reverend Canon Dr. Ed Rodman, who meant so much to so many of us, means so much to so many of us. My name is Lydia Buckland. I serve as the president and dean at Episcopal Divinity School. And like many of you, Ed was my teacher, and he was a mentor and a huge inspiration in my life. Cheryl Kujawa Holbrook has written, and I could not agree more, that the embodiment of the Episcopal Divinity School's mission of justice, compassion, and reconciliation was Ed. Ed blessed EDS with a passion for equipping future generations of religious leaders to work for justice, confront racism, and other forms of oppression, and to advocate for the marginalized. And was he ever effective in that work? And testimony is all of you, all of us who are here carrying on this work and paying an honor to him tonight. So absolutely an honor and a blessing to gather with you and to host this event. Thank you to our panel and to the filmmakers. We are so blessed, and I'm going to turn it over to Bishop Mark Beckwith.
Thank you. Thank you, Lydia, and welcome to everyone. My name is Mark Beckwith, retired bishop of the Diocese of Newark. And like many of us, Ed was an important mentor to me when I was a priest and as a bishop. And as many of us know who knew Ed, he would often say with great pride that he never left any fingerprints or footprints on any of the conversations or the movements that he was involved in. About 5 years ago, I went to visit Ed and his wife Bungie at their home in Massachusetts and said, Ed, you need to leave some fingerprints and footprints. Would you agree to do that? And to my surprise, he said yes. And initially we thought we'd get somebody to write a book about all that he had done, but Canon Spellers, Stephanie Spellers, who will offer a closing prayer, suggested let's do a video. So we found a video company in Texas. We raised some money and pulled together a group of people, which included Rand Chase, Ike Miller, and Bob Steele, both of whom were classmates of Ed, the Reverend Nan Pete, Canon Stephanie Spellers, and Canon Greg Jacobs. And we worked together to come up with this video and a second video called A Prophet Among Us, that was an interview by the Reverend Hershey Stevens, who will be on our panel after the video. And we have two videos. We're going to show you the Canon Ed Rodman video, which is 35 minutes long. There's another video that you can access on the EDS website and other websites as well. Going to show the video, and afterward I'll facilitate a conversation with the panelists who I'll introduce at that time. We were hoping to have our presiding bishop, Michael Curry, join us, but we're told and we're allowed to report that he has a bad cold and is not able to be with us. And before we show the video, let me offer a quick prayer. Gracious God, we pray for the legacy and the life and the witness of Canon Ed Rodman. We pray for Michael Curry, for health for him. We pray for Sean Rowe, who will succeed Michael in the next couple of months, and for all of us who dare to follow you, who dare to follow the wisdom, the legacy, and the power of Ed Rodman. In your name we pray. Amen. Let us have the video.
One of the things that I was into for a variety of reasons is I was an acolyte in the church. And so that provided an opportunity to not necessarily perceive what my vocation would be, but to understand what it could be. So that was my introduction to service in that sense. I led the first high school and only really sit-in 1960. And we were one of the first to integrate Woolworths. And it became quite a thing because although we knew we were supposed to be nonviolent, they were not prepared for the clash. The White High School was across what we call a military highway, which is a 4-lane, interstate. And Rose, which was the place we went to first, was right in the middle. So the white guys came over, our guys came over, and the next thing you knew, there was this melee. So the next day, there were thousands of people out on either side of the highway. And Life magazine caught a picture of that. I was on the cover. And there are those who take the position that that could have been the end of the civil rights movement, because that could have been an ugly scene. But somehow we avoided it. And CORE, Congress of Racial Equality, which was a nonviolent organization at that time, zipped down and gave us the anti-racism training, nonviolence training that we needed in order to be effective. And so we developed a strategy, moved downtown, and did a boycott of F.W. Woolworths, which became the primary target of the sit-in movement throughout the South. Some of the less thoughtful people thought it was a lark and thought it would be fun to do. And I took the position that, well, if you don't have any planning, if you don't know what you're doing, you're crazy. And of course, what happened, happened. So then they said, well, we better listen to him. And CORE came down. And then that opened a whole bunch of very interesting experiences in my life at that time, because CORE decided that I was one of the stars. So they brought me up to New York several times and met with all kinds of people. Mayor Rustin taught me about dealing with the press, and went to Harry Belafonte's house 2 or 3 times and met all kinds of celebrities, in my mind anyway. I never will forget watching this intense conversation between James Baldwin and Mayor Rustin. And I turned to Belafonte, I said, what are they talking about? And he thought for a minute. And he said, well, they're, in those days, they used the word queer. They're queer, and that's what they're talking about. I said, oh, okay, live and learn. So I grew up real fast, but then I went on a speaking tour, went to Princeton and Yale and Harvard, whatnot, talking, because it was quite a thing in those days. See, that's where Mayor Rustin was very helpful. So he taught me the basic lesson of public relations. Always know what you're going to say, regardless of what they ask. And if you don't know what they're going to ask, don't say anything. Because if you don't have your story straight, then they'll mess you up. And that has worked for me. Matter of fact, it was really funny because they invited me to be a speaker at a rally in Harlem. And it was this huge rally. Malcolm X was the primary speaker, and he had sat right next to me, and I didn't quite, I mean, I knew him, but he was so close. And he started his thing, and he carried on and carried on. And I finally figured out who he was. And then he said, and now for our keynote speaker, Ed Rodman. And I said, oh, rule number one, know what you're going to say. And he had made a big thing about my going to jail and being arrested and whatnot. And I simply said, in the struggle for human dignity, jail is a minor thing. And that made the front page of the New York Times. Ella Baker called us, some of us, the original crew, together in late March, early April of 1960 down at Shaw University in Raleigh. And that was really the initial founding of SNCC. It didn't become formalized until 62.
Until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons, becomes as important to the rest of the country as the killing of a white mother's son. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until this happens.
She was the godmother of the civil rights movement. She came out of the Harlem Renaissance and was a real force. And at that point, she was the executive director of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And in the middle of the meeting, Martin Luther King strode in, and of course, he's young and arrogant and whatnot, and he tried to take over the meeting. And she looked at him like he was a fool and said, Martin, sit down and shut up. What we need are movement-centered leaders, not leader-centered movements. And I said, that's it. And that's been my motto ever since. Now that's deep. And that has been my mantra really ever since. How different would history have been if King and others had not allowed themselves to become enamored with their own propaganda? See, most of them violated my first principle of spiritual discipline. Never believe your own propaganda. But now the students, we all bonded, and it was no big deal. And that's why SNCC never had a real leader. We just had a rotating crew until Rat Brown decided he was going to capitalize on it. And poor John Lewis got sucked in, and that's when I left, because he was supposed to give the speech at the March on Washington. And the powers that be told him he couldn't give the speech. Some of us had worked hard on that speech, and we were not happy. And so after that was over, most of us left. We had a little meeting at my house in Portsmouth, as many of them were going back. And that's when the first concept of Black Power emerged. And Stokely and whatnot, that was what they wanted to go to immediately. But some of us said, no, let's just wait and see how it all plays out. Let's not just jump out there. We already are out on a limb, and we had no idea what was going to happen to the movement at that point. So we said, let us not be instruments of our own oppression. Let it happen. And it emerged.
Let us not forget that we are involved in a serious social revolution, where is the political party that will make it unnecessary to march on Washington? Where is the political party that will make it unnecessary to march in the streets of Birmingham? Those who have said be patient and wait, we must say that we cannot be patient. If we do not get meaningful legislation out of this Congress, we will march through the South, through the streets of Jackson, through the streets of Danville, through the streets of Cambridge, through the streets of Birmingham.
I mean, he knew what he wanted to say, but he was not up for that kind of stage. So Stokely and I and a couple others helped him, with a little more erudite presentation. And when they saw it, they hit the roof. Especially Rabbi Heschel, which I was kind of surprised at, but he was one of the principal, opponents. And A. Philip Randolph had I got to be careful what I say, was not happy because he had the original idea of the March on Washington. had led the one in 43, and he wanted it to be jobs and freedom. And King and the civil rights people wanted it to be, whatever. And so there was that tension all the way through the whole thing until King blew him away with I Have a Dream.
Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
But that was not the speech he was going to give. See, he gave two speeches. He gave the first speech where he was talking about, we have this promissory note and all that kind of stuff. And in the background, you can hear Mahalia Jackson and several other people yell, Martin, your dream, your dream. Because that had been his primary speech leading up to the march. And so he very smoothly morphed into I Have a Dream, which was pre-programmed. Oh, we had a party, man. See, that the whole thing was, SNCC was nothing but a party. Matter of fact, that's the great story about SNCC. I mean, we halfway serious, but when you're dealing with life and death, for many of them, not me, because I never got caught in those kind of situations, you had to have that gallows humor. And the thing that was the most interesting was that, of course, there were a lot of white people who wanted to be involved. And one day, these sisters called a meeting. It was funny. And they looked at us and they said, you get these goddamn white women out of here and stop messing with them. And you didn't think black women had power, brother. That was the end of that. And that's why white people got put out of SNCC. Because the sisters said, no, none of this interracial harmony. The question I ask is, why has no one written that history? Nobody's written that history. And there were a whole bunch of us who were involved, but none of us have written that history. And it's like a lot of other things in my life I've been involved in, where it's better not to write the history. Because, even now, the tensions are real. And when I say, they wanted the white people out because they didn't want, interracial dating, that could still be considered controversial. And although you may remember many things, it's not always helpful to tell them all. That's like Cyrus Vance was very serious with us in 1969 when I was at Yale, and we had this big confrontation with Kingman Brewster and provost and whatnot. Actually, that was one of the only Mau Mau sessions, what a Mau Mau session was. That's when black folks confronted white folks in a rather aggressive fashion. That's where the term up against the wall came from, literally. And so they got so unnerved by all of this that they called Paul Moore, who was the Bishop of York at the time. And he and I knew each other from a variety of things. And I said, man, if you don't want to see Yale burned down, you better send somebody here who can deal with us. And of course, his office on Amsterdam Avenue is right across from Columbia, and Columbia was literally burning. So he didn't ask a second question. He said, I'll call you back in 45 minutes. Cyrus Vance will be there tomorrow at 12 noon. You all have your stuff together. He didn't quite say it that way. Very earthy fellow. And sure enough, he came in. No nonsense with his Secret Service people. He said, I just had to leave Paris to come here and deal with you. He didn't say niggers, but that was the implication. And he said, what do you want? So we had our stuff together. We laid it out. He thought about it a minute. He said, you got it. And his only stipulation was, you can't talk about this for 25 years. And we said, we don't need to talk about it at all. Just give us the money. We'll get it going. So he was a very interesting character. We had the Black Manifesto fiasco in '69. That was the thing that the Black Economic Committee promoted to get reparations from white institutions. And they started with churches. And Muhammad Kenyatta was the primary spokesperson. And he would show up at these big church meetings and bogart the stage, read the manifesto. So they all got discombobulated, didn't know what to do. So Coburn, at that time, was the president of the House of Deputies. And he called this meeting, several of us, to his Princeton club down in New York. Wined and dined us. It was very lovely. And then he said, now, gentlemen, let's get down to business. And so I said to my buddies, I said, don't say anything, just listen. So sure enough, ultimately he said, we got $800,000 we'll give you if you make this go away. He didn't quite say it that coarsely, but that was the implication. So I said, well, we'll take a break. So I took the fellows into the men's room. And I said, that's what I thought he was going to do. So we have to turn it down. You never saw a grown man cry like those guys cried. They cried like babies. They said, oh, no, $800,000. I said, take that money, you owe you. You'll never be able to say another thing. They let me turn it down. They didn't want to be identified one way or the other. But Coburn just kind of smiled like he did the other time. And he just looked at me and kind of nodded and said, smart boy. Well, I was one of the original organizers. It was put together by these old timers. That was it was a funny story. There was this fellow named Tolly Caution, Reverend Tolly Caution, who had been a long time black at the door, you know. And he was Mr. Negro there at 815 for years. The new presiding Bishop, John Hines, for whatever reason, I never fully understood what his thinking was, but he fired him. Well, the old timers got pissed off. They went berserk. So they formed this organization. And then they said, but we don't know what to do. So they turned to what they called the Young Turks at that time and said, you guys run with this. So we said, really? He said, okay. And, you know, so we did our thing. This was 1968, 69. And part of what we did was have Muhammad Kenyatta come and do the Black Manifesto. That was sort of the opening salvo in our little offensive, getting the church's attention. It was originally the Union of Black Clergy and Laity. And of all people, Nathan Wright came to a meeting in '71. He was a very flamboyant Black Episcopal clergyman who made a lot of money off of the Black Power movement, giving speeches. And he could do it. He carried on like a fool. So anyway, he said that name was too complicated. We just needed a simple name. And since it was an inclusive organization, he said, Union of Black Episcopalians. And we said, okay, that works. So that was that. A colleague of mine at the Episcopal Diocese named Gil Avery started an organization called Coalition E, which was a conglomerate of progressive groups that met every 3 years at General Convention. But it was totally ad hoc, thrown together, and that was that. And it became clear that we needed to be a little more organized than that. So Bishop Barbara Harris was one of my major collaborators over the years, came up with the idea of this more organized group. and we couldn't come up with a name. So I said, well, why don't we just call it the consultation? Everybody said, okay, right, we consult one another. And then they turned to me and said, well, what's your role going to be? I said, well, I'll be the consultant. And it stopped, There was a conglomerate of all of the progressive groups in the church, the Episcopal Church, Peace Fellowship, Union of Black Episcopalians, Church and City Conference, go down the list. My theory was Episcopal Church has a lot of resources. My job is to get those resources into the community and to position myself in such a way that I can make that happen. So wherever I went, I had a grants program, leveraged money from hither and yon, and constantly tried to feed and support grassroots organizations. And that's what I did. That was my vocation. Never said it quite so crassly, but that's what I did. I only had 2 official jobs. See, I think that's very important. Now, I had a lot of consultations, but I was the assistant minister at St. Paul's, New Haven. And then I went and worked for 30 years with the Diocese of Massachusetts. And in the last 10 years, I was a professor at the Episcopal Divinity School. And that was it. Now, I had many other side hustles, but that's what I got paid for. And the first day on the job, the Bishop, John Burgess, was the first Black diocesan bishop in the Episcopal Church. And for some reason, he hired me. He said, this woman's coming in to meet with you, and you need to talk to her and tell me what you think of it. And it was the woman who started the Boston School Desegregation case. So 71, May of 71. And so I came back and told him, man, this is going to be a big deal. And you need to be on top of it. He had been on this organization called the Racial Imbalance Committee, which had been set up since 65 when King came to give his first Northern March. And a lot of people forgot that. He said, well, you do that. And a funny story about that is that went all around Robin Hood's barn, but there was a court case, Judge Garrity, a really courageous guy. And after 3 years of fooling with these clowns at the Boston City Council, he laid down the law and said, we're going to desegregate these schools. And it was a big argument because it was the first case where there was a whole constitutional issue of the de facto segregation and de jure segregation were the same thing. Because de jure was just the law, and that was the South. North was de facto. And Tom Atkins, who was the head of NAACP, was the guy who spearheaded that Boston branch. Very brilliant man. Hoosier, by the way, as I am. And he said, we got to do this. So the judge turned to the committee and said, you all do the plan. Since they won't do it, you do it. Because the state, in Massachusetts anyway, had the responsibility, the state board, not local. So we came up with the most draconian plan that we could, figuring it would scare them to death and they'd come to the table and negotiate. And those arrogant sons of bitches didn't have anything to do with it. So the judge said, this is what's on the table. This is what we're going to do. And we were all shocked. And that taught me a very important lesson. Never put on paper something that you're not prepared to follow through on. Because it was just incredibly chaotic for that first year. There was this bright young man. He was really committed to South African liberation. And so we sent him down, or empowered him or whatever, to go down along with, Marion Wright Edelman, to see what they could do, because they were both based in Boston. This is 78, 79, somewhere in And she went on to found the, Children's Defense Fund, and he founded the South African, what did they call that thing? But it was the committee that worked with South African liberation. And part of the payback for that was when Mandela got out. The first place he came was Boston to thank us for all the work that we did, because we supported the ANC in Boston. That was their headquarters until, it got legalized. I was in the room. I have nothing to do with the ANC, man. You know what? I'm not South African, never been there. Been to, what's the name? Zimbabwe, but not South Africa. Looked over the bridge. Now, the funny story about that was they had this big reception for that entourage that came with him, and the creme de la creme of the Black community, of which I was not one. So you look on the TV, and there are all these folks in African garb, and all these folks in Western garb. And you look closely, and you see it's the Black South Africans who are in the three-piece suits, and it's these American Negroes. That's what I call them. And all this African stuff. It was absolutely hilarious. That's like when we did the sit-ins. We had these Africans in Hampton, and they kept begging us to let them do it. So one day we said, okay, you guys want to do it. You're on your visa status better than we do. But put on your African stuff. So they did. Went down to the lunch counter, sat in, and they got served. And I said, yeah, didn't see that coming. So we borrowed this stuff the next day. And the guy looked at us and said, I'm not going to serve you. He said, you served our brothers yesterday. He said, yeah, but we know our niggas. And that's it. And see that, if you want the bottom line of racism, that was it. They know their niggas. The first anti-racism thing we did was in '83 in Atlanta, put together by Earl Neal when he was still running the Coalition for Human Need. And then we gradually built on that. And then when the Rodney King thing happened, that's when we got together in Massachusetts, had a town meeting, and came up with the anti-racism program. And I wrote the open letter. Created a cadre of people who wanted to do something. How people are. So I said, okay, well then let's pull together and develop an anti-racism program, training program. And Earl had pioneered it. And I wrote the open letter to the Episcopal Church on the subject. And that got the attention of a lot of people. And the movement kind of began from that. And we got support from Cheryl Kujawa, who was at EDS. And we actually did the first training at EDS. And she and I did it. And then over time, we were able to put together a committee. And then we were able to train people. And it worked. It was okay. We did a lot of stuff. It was funny, the very first one we did was at a white suburban church in Concord, Mass. This very bright woman spoke up, and she said, well, shouldn't we have some Black people in this? I said, well, we could, but it's anti-racism training. And she said, but can't we import some Black people? I said, madam, that's how the problem began. And of course, everybody kind of. We got the curriculum from Cheryl originally. She put together an anti-racism program for the National Church for the Youth, because she decided because she became the head of the youth program first before she went to EDS. And she enlisted a fellow named Charlie Berger and his associates. And they put together a workbook called DreamWorks. That was the template, if you will, for the training that we developed that elaborated on it. The only time we did a mandatory thing, which was against my better judgment, but they were willing to pay, was the Presbyterian Church. We actually did the entire national staff of the Presbyterian Church. And that was an experience, to put it that way, because a lot of people were very unhappy about doing it. And that's why I never believed mandating it, because people don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. It's like vaccines. Doesn't matter whether it's good for you. We have a book, but they don't throw it at you. Simple as that. Good Episcopalian. But we did do the pension fund. We did the Presbyterian Church. I forget who else. Oh, the one place we milked them was Trinity Wall Street, because they had the money. So we definitely made that one work for us. What we did was we would always start with the bishop and staff if the bishop was open to it. We never went into a diocese uninvited. And that would have been dumb. So, hey, I'm a good Episcopalian. I respect hierarchy. So we never went anywhere that we weren't invited. And we never stayed if it became clear that we weren't welcome. It's happened a couple times. Most of the people just didn't show up, and that's how you knew they were unwilling to participate. Because nobody wants to hear the truth. They don't want to deal with the facts, as it were. That's why that 1619 project was so controversial. They didn't make anything up. They were just telling the story. People don't want to hear it, which is fine. That's the secret to white privilege. You don't want to hear it, you don't have to. No more profound than that. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And the harmony is very profound. But hey, that's the history of America. As Bertrand Russell said, where there's hope, despair is the coward's part. And I really believe that. That's one of my mantras. I have 4 rules of spiritual discipline. You can take them or leave them. The first rule is never believe your own propaganda. Second rule is never forget the most dangerous thing in the world is to try to leap a chasm with 2 jumps. The third rule is nothing has a greater hold on the minds of people than ignorance fraught with technicalities. And the fourth rule is picking a ditch to die in is still suicide. And that's it. End of wisdom.
I was in the room when Ed made the video, and some 3 years later, I still feel as moved as I did then, and so grateful for the opportunity for him to tell this story. And now to respond to the movie and to Ed's legacy and ministry, have a panel here with us this evening. The Reverend Eva Cavallari, who's the senior chaplain at National Cathedral School in Washington, D.C., and Ed was her advisor at EDS. The Reverend Hershey Mallet Stevens is chaplain at St. Augustine's University and the host of the other video, A Prophet Among Us. The Reverend Canon Stephanie Spellers is here and will be offering closing prayers when we finish promptly at 7:30. And then there's Dr. Deborah Hyman Hines from Tennessee, but we were neighbors in Worcester, Massachusetts for many years, and she was president of UBE for 6 years from 1982 to 1988. And just to go around the room, just to say, how did you know Ed Rodman, and what was your relationship like with him? And just a very short answer, because we have several other questions that will invite longer responses. So Eva, what was your relationship with Ed, and what was it like?
Thank you. You know, Ed was my advisor in my years at EDS, and he was he was a counselor. He was a friendly face. He was the guy sitting on the bench smoking a cigarette that everyone greeted as we all walked by. Just an ongoing presence and lovely connector. So, yeah.
Great. Debbie, Dr. Hines, how did you describe your relationship with Ed?
I had met Ed with UBE the first few times I attended. And in 1982, Ed and Bunchy Rodman, Faith and her husband Ed Chase, and Burgess and Francis Carr cornered me in a bedroom at UBE. And now we were in bedrooms because we were in college dormitories. And they told me, you should be the next president of UBE. And I told them they were all crazy. And I stormed out of the room. The next thing I looked up, I got elected national president. And Ed has been behind me, beside me, in front of me ever since.
And Hershey?
So I didn't know Canon Rodman until I did the interview with him. And when I did that interview, I felt like I'd known him my whole life. His work and, scholarship and mentorship, I think, prepared the way for me to live authentically into my calling as a priest in this church.
And Presiding Bishop Curry, who I mentioned earlier, is not able to be with us tonight because he has a bad cold, talked about, sent a message about how over the decades, Ed has been an advisor and a supporter of Michael as a priest, as a bishop, and as a presiding bishop. To each of you, what stood out for you about the film? What's the part that really grabbed you? Debbie, I'll start with you.
Well, for me, Ed always encouraged you to think deep, but think simple. He made everything so simple, and you go, that's all it is? And so out of that, people didn't realize great things come from simple ideas, simple thoughts, but how simple Ed made things so that you didn't have to be really bright to understand it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hershey?
Yeah, I think that is especially important. And I'd like to think of it as kind of a spiritual pragmatism. Ed had this way, when I was speaking with him, it's like, you already know what to do. It's written in the book. You read the book and you do what Jesus did, and I remember talking to him about, what do you do with people who are apathetic or too lazy to fight racism? And he was like, it's written in the book. You say peace to those people who accept you, and you shake the dust off the feet you know, use your energy for something else. And I love that kind of his practical, you know, practical nature comes through in the video. And the part we didn't watch, there's like a little part on the end, I think that just it's like some outtakes that capture his humor and just kind of like gregarious nature. So I encourage everyone, if you have a minute, just it's only 2 minutes. It's the last little bit of him just being Ed.
Eva?
Well, I've been out of seminary for 20 years and I hadn't seen Ed in recent years. So seeing the video really brought him back to me. I had him both as a mentor and I took classes with him. Those four sort of, what did he call them? His things that he lives by.
Right.
As soon as I heard him say them, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally remember him relying on those. I mean, these really were his sort of like key mission statements that he would not only live by with himself, but also use as like a, and I remember he would often tell me that I was frequently trying to leap a chasm in only 2 steps. Like that was often my like, it made me also remember how much he relied on the Socratic method. And also, so he was constantly asking us questions. And I felt like such a plebe, like just like kind of wanting to learn from him because he'd ask a question, we'd take a stab at answering it, and then he would explain it to us, right? Like, and there was frequently this sort of process of engagement that in some ways speaks to that sense of like, if you want to move towards me, I have something to share. And I think that questioning really helped me as a learner. And now I teach, you know, and so I'm really mindful of that. And I hadn't even realized it until I was just remembering that now. The other thing, and I don't want to talk too much, but just one of the things that really stands out to me as I was preparing to be with you all tonight was just, so I attended the 2004 General Convention in Minneapolis when a lot of stuff happened. And I just remember Ed, like, first of all, the part that we didn't see in the video, which when I was at EDS, I really thought of him around his, or understood him more in terms of his role around supporting Barbara Harris and her leadership as bishop, and also getting her elected. Those stories were very alive in that community. And I just remember being so struck at how, first of all, people loved him, like especially white women would just hang all over him. And he didn't have to do much. He just sat there and everyone was drawn to him. And he would like do his work in that way. Like he would deputize people and they would go out and do the things he needed them to do. And I just remember thinking, like, how is he doing all of this? But his hand touched so much around that sense of community organization and movement forward, that his point about like not all the stories had to be told. I don't even know if everyone understood or even may still understand how his hand touched people's motivations, the legacies that live on in him or through as a result of him. So anyways, those are just a few of the thoughts of what I think of after seeing this video.
What stood out for me is Ella Baker's comment, we need movement-centered leaders, not leader-centered movements, as she dresses down Martin Luther King. And Ed was there for that conversation with Bayard Rustin, Malcolm X. He was present, and as he would say in the video, I was in the room. I was in the room. Well, we now have a record of him being in the room and the impact that he had. What we didn't include in the video, just to keep the time within normal limits, after the Attica uprising in the early 1970s, Ed was doing work at Walpole State Prison, and he and others, I think, prevented a similar fatal riot at Walpole State Prison. And that's another story. And also, many of us have seen the documentary of the 11 women who've been ordained in the Episcopal Church. What wasn't said in that video is many of them, I think all of them, consulted with Ed around the community organizing dimensions of it that were necessary for them to move forward. Ed was, I've often said to people that Ed was the smartest person I've ever known. That has upset some of my friends who thought that they were the smartest person. No. Ed eclipses you. His wisdom and his simplicity, as Debbie said. How would you describe Canon Rodman's impact on the church and/or society? And Hershey, I'll start with you.
So I think, you know, as I mentioned in my introduction, that his work made it possible for many of us who are working in this church as priests to show up as our authentic selves. I'm sorry, this is my authentic self, you know, like I got a husband who's traveling, a sick baby, you know, and one out. So, but, you know, kind of bringing all of your experiences to ministry, right? Like feeling like you didn't have to leave your culture and the learnings of who you are, and the struggles of being a Black person in America at the door of the church or the door of the meeting room. But to be a priest is to fully acknowledge who God made you to be with, and to live the lessons from your life. So I'll leave it there.
Okay. Debbie, what impact do you see it has on the church?
The impact I see is just universal in how many people he taught, not just people who went the clergy route. I'm a lay person and a vowed lay person. You know how I feel about that, Mark. He taught everybody everything, whoever came within his sphere. And one of the things I wanted to add from the previous conversation was his tremendous powers of observation. So I learned from him to look, to watch, to observe, and then his analytical skills. He would sit at the back of the room with his shades on and not move an inch. You thought he was the Buddha or something. He'd sit there and took in everything. And then afterwards, we would have Black caucus meetings, the Black deputies meetings or whatever. And he would analyze everything that happened, tell you everybody who did this, who moved from what chair to what. And if you didn't know who somebody was, he said, well, they had on so and so and so. And so for me, it was an example of how to use my mind to do God's work. Up until that point, everything I'd heard through the churches is cross your eyes, pray, and things will happen. I didn't know you had to do stuff. And from Ed, I learned how to jumpstart that and how to do things, how to get things done. And as I said, from his observational skills, his analytical skills, and then his strategizing skills. So those are the three things he gave to all of us, or anybody who was willing to listen.
Okay. Eva, the impact on the church and society?
That's a big question. I really resonate, Debbie, with your comments just now. I mean, I think about a lot of the work that I did with Ed actually had to do with anti-racism training, being equipped. And also, I think he and I did an independent study, or it was a project I did in a class he was teaching, where I was analyzing the various anti-racism, the methodologies associated with different anti-racism trainings to try to understand in a deeper way. Just kind of like I was most personally fascinated by the sort of understanding how people operate and how to create change and transformation. I think the church talks a lot about that, but how do we actually do it, especially in something so profound and important as being this predominantly white institution, and figuring out like, how do we move the needle here? And ultimately in my own vocation, it's moved towards schools, where that has continued to be a really central part of the work that I do, and also understanding what it means to be a chaplain and centering the voices of those on the margins of my own community. So I say a little bit about what I do, because in some ways, I don't know that I can speak to this broader vision of the church or, you know, the world, because I don't know, but I know how I think I'm profoundly changed, and his lessons and the time that I had with him live in me in ways that I'm honored to continue that commitment and stand on that foundation. So that's probably the best answer I can offer.
I've been ordained for 45 years, and I can't think of anybody who had more impact on the Episcopal Church than Ed Rodman. And I wrote that to one of his daughters, and she corrected me. She said, it's not 45 years, it's 55 years of his impact. I don't know anybody who's had greater impact in terms of movement of the church than Ed. And I'm just so grateful that we have memories and recorded memories of who he is and what he's done. What's the most important lesson that you've learned from Ed Rodman? Eva, you're smiling.
Well, honestly, as soon as I heard him say, like, don't try to leap a chasm in 2 steps or something, I was like, oh, that one has continued to resonate in me so much. Usually if I'm struggling, I retrace my steps and start over. So that one just stood out. The other thing is I saw that question in anticipation of this evening. I just really think that recognizing the way that every single person has the capacity to be an agent of change, and finding ways to leverage that, and understanding the sort of, sometimes it's a strategy and sometimes it's, you know, just this sort of different ways to go about that. That's been a key lesson, I think, that I carried forward.
Hershey?
I want to say, yeah, the never leap a chasm into, like, I am so ADD and so impatient. I'm like, come on, I've already figured this out. Let's go. And I think his sense of call that priests are to walk with people, right? Like, it doesn't matter if he has figured it out, or I figured it out, or the person who's leading has figured it out, that our work is to walk with our people, to guide them, to push and pull and cajole, and to love them to the place that we know that they can go, right? Not to go stand there and say, y'all come on, you know? And I just think that his candor and authenticity, and, you know, like, I'm just going back to him being practical. Like, yes, you will be afraid. That is what it means to follow the gospel, you know. And you know, he ended this conversation with that quote about, you know, despair is the coward's work. And I think when we talked, he was like, you know, your only job is to not be a coward. And I think I hold that with me, right? Like, whenever I'm afraid because I know that the gospel is pulling something or going to require me to do something I don't want to do, which is most of the time, I'm like, Jesus, find somebody else. I remember that, like, just don't be a coward. Do what you know is right and true, you know. And then I remember that it's written in some book somewhere, and, you know, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. Like, you know, it's not going to be that bad. It's going to be bad. You might die, but You will be resurrected. So
Debbie?
Ed recognized the power of women publicly long before it was popular. And his support of me as UBE president, I was the first woman elected president, allowed me to do the work that I had been elected to do. And behind the scenes, Ed recruited a lot of the good old boys in the Black church to be supportive because they just were not hearing it. And here we are some 40 years later, and women are doing more. Barbara hadn't even been ordained at that time. And her ordination, not only as a priest, but then consecration as a bishop, how he supported her 100% behind the scenes, sticks with me. But the other thing that sticks with me, and it appealed to my nature as an educator and as a scientist, is to think, just think. If you sit down, calm down, figure this thing out, come up with a plan, you can work your plan because 99% of the time, nobody else has a plan. And I took that into my life. Mark and I were right there in Worcester together to the University of Massachusetts Medical School. And we had the medical school doing the things that churches should have been doing in terms of sharing resources and getting out into the community. So I have to say that everything I learned about administration, I learned in the Episcopal Church, and Ed Rodman was one of my teachers.
Mm-hmm. Ed reminds me of a book that was written a bunch of years ago called Cold Anger by Ernesto Cortez, who's one of the lead organizers of the Industrial Areas Foundation. Many of us were involved in that. And Ed lived with cold anger. And what I learned from him more than anything else, his anger is always addressed at the injustice and never to the people committing the injustice. And that was a spiritual discipline that I couldn't get enough of, because he had so many things that he directed his anger at, but never made it personal. And he had every reason in the world to make it personal, but he didn't. And that's a takeaway for me that I will always treasure. I don't know of anyone who took on so many injustices as Ed did and not just kept his cool, but saw the people on the other side still as children of God. Enormous self-discipline in that regard. Before we open up to people who are attending here, what would it look like for the church to build on his legacy? What would it look like for the church to build on his legacy? Debbie, what's your thought?
Well, I've often wondered why when people go to church, and I think I've said it to you, Mark, they go brain dead. I mean, the highly educated people, when they get to church, they fold their hands, cross their eyes, and all of a sudden they go totally brain dead. The church, for me, would be a church that sat down and figured out what the problems were and what the solutions are, and then executed, leading the rest of our society to solve the problem. We've got enough food in this country to feed everybody. We've got enough houses in this country, and I'm talking about empty ones, to house people. We could solve all the problems if we just sat down and stopped fighting with each other. So what that legacy means to the church and to the world and to me would be the church would lead in doing the work of God.
Thank you. Hershey?
I just want to circle back to what Debbie said about Canon Rodman's support of women. You know, I remember going to his home and talking with Mrs. Rodman and having to kind of move him back to talking about himself as I was interviewing him, you know, because of the things that his wife, Bungie had accomplished, and the things that she'd done with this other group of Black women, and just his pride of being a partner, right? Like, and walking with someone in this life who is also invested in the work of the church. And I guess as I think about building on his legacy, I'm really interested to see how this kind of slow trickle movement of reparations is happening in the church, what that looks like, how the Episcopal Church plans to address and redress Black people, but particularly Black congregations who have, in the best of circumstances, been, I guess, subject to benign neglect, and in the worst of circumstances, experience outright hostility from their bishops and sisters and brothers in Christ. And so I'm interested because I feel like Canon Rodman would have something to say about that, about how we prioritize money and mission, and prioritize people, and our own soul, right? Like, it's not, salvation is not personal. I think that's the huge thing that Canon Rodman shares with us and challenges us with. Salvation is a communal experience and project. And we are called to invite everyone into that project. And so I'm interested to see how this little idea and corner of mission around reparations is going to play out. And I think about Canon Rodman as well as like Harold Lewis, and all of these kind of, for my generation, grandfathers, of the Black Episcopal Church, right? Like, and the indignities they suffer, but with great dignity, and self-assurance and knowledge of God's love for them, and the way they try to open the way, not just for people who look like them, right? Because salvation does not come just to Black people, but they open the way for all of us, right? To understand ourselves as a family, as a church, as people who are striving to do God's work, and striving to understand God in this place and time and in one another.
Thank you. Eva?
Richie, thank you. Kind of wish you were going after me. Thank you. What keeps coming to me is just legacy from Ed would be deep engagement, ongoing deep engagement, willingness for the church to continue in its predominantly white history to examine itself, to understand that deep connectivity that we share, and to think more and more about kind of the flip side of the reparations piece, right? Like, how will we move forward together, especially in this current climate, in this season that we're in, that is so fraught and yet makes this work so important. And so the other piece that just came to mind is just when he sort of like named his vocation in such simplistic terms, as if that was simple, but that also is a signal in some ways of what would make sense moving forward, which also speaks a little to but how are we channeling money to those, the resources that move the needle in people's communities' lives. So those are a few of my thoughts that come to mind.
This is a question that's hard for me to answer because I'm still mourning his loss. Seeing the video just sort of brought up all these feelings. He was so ready and willing to share his wisdom, and so much wisdom I received from Ed, and he was willing to give it to anyone. And he had a a bottomless pit of wisdom. And the legacy is just, and what could the church look like is that for us, all of us who are part of this webinar today, to not only honor his wisdom, but to explore our own wisdom. And who are we going to share it with? Not just holding the things in the status quo, but moving beyond where we are. I'd like to open it up in the time that we have available for people to either ask a question in the chat or raise a hand. And as you do so, I want to recognize the Reverend Emily Walker Cornetta, who is the Director of Programming and Operations at EDS, who put all this together and did all the technical work to make it possible, and to thank her and the very Reverend Lydia Buckland, who is the new dean at EDS. And so people can put questions in the chat or raise a hand. And Emily, I'm going to draw on you to help us get through how to do this.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Bishop Mark. And just as Bishop Mark said, yeah, if there are questions that you want to raise for our panel, or even just remembrances that you would like to share into this space, then you're welcome to do that. I'm keeping an eye on the chat. Another way you can do that is raise your Zoom hand, your digital hand, and I'll see you. I'll see you that way. So we can just wait on that for a minute, and just know that I'm paying attention. So that if there's something you'd like to raise, you're welcome to do that.
Memory, reflection, or story. Somebody wrote down the Ed Rodmanisms. You know, if we could just, somebody needs to inventory them. It would fill half a book. Stephanie, you have your hand up. Canon Spellers.
Actually, I didn't. Oops.
Oh, it's Roselia. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm not very technology, very good at it, but I'd known Ed's long time ago. And one of those foot soldiers that followed UBE for years and years. And I was just so inspired by him, inspired to do the work of UBE. And I'm still working in UBE in Newark, New Jersey. With
oh my goodness, Rosie. All right. All right.
Yeah. Bishop Mark, you know I know you. I saw your name.
Okay,
on the panel. I said, I'm gonna be on. I saw Deborah was gonna be on. I said, oh my goodness. And I signed in, and it took me, I couldn't get in. I finally got in. I just persevered. I just hated not to miss this. But I have just, all the things you've said, nobody can say it better. You've said it all to me. I have a book of his sermons. I have, I constantly continue to read Let There Be Peace Among Us, and don't know if it's still in print or whatever, but I just share what I know. And we continue to try to do the work on justice in our chapter. We continue to try to collaborate and be part of diocesan activities and whatever, and to lift up leadership. We're trying to get this new generation to get on board. Just trying to figure out how to get that, because it's not easy. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. They're not coming to church. And we need to figure out how we can transform the way we do things to be more inclusive of the young people, because they're the next generation. I'm getting old. So, Mark, I just wanted to say this, that I was just so, when I saw this was coming on, I could not resist not being on it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosalia. I see also Will's hand raised. Will, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm Will Bronson. I came to EDS in 2006. Ed was my mentor and advisor. and I'm 3 years older than him, so I'm probably the first person that he mentored who was actually older. And I was 69 at the time, and a lot of people wondered why I was there, or how I got there, or if I should be there. And I was a evangelical, a straight white guy, retired airline pilot, and a lot of people thought I was really out of place. But I have to say that if it weren't for Ed's encouragement and mentorship, I probably wouldn't have finished my DMin 2 years later. I lived on campus, and I just have such fond memories of him. And yeah, he was a guy, one of the few people there who really made me feel welcome. And so I hung in there and I finished, and now I'm working on a project to create a public school curriculum on comparative religion. So anyway, I just can't say enough for him. Previous to my coming to seminary, we probably crossed paths in Boston because I was involved in the Boston controversy when Judge Garrity, who was mentioned in the video, was running the school system. And I was appointed by the Boston Finance Commission to try to come up with a solution. And I won't get into those details, but I presented it at the Education Commission of the States the following year. But yeah, wonderful guy. Look forward to seeing him soon, because I'm not, I won't be far behind.
Thank you so much, Will.
Thank you.
Thanks. And next I see Randy's hand up, and feel free, you're welcome to put your video on too. You don't have to, but you're welcome to do that.
Well, thank you. Well, first I want to just say thank you to everyone for creating this space to hear these stories and to just talk about Canon Ed Rodman, who was truly a hero for me. I first met Ed when I was a young lad growing up in UBE. So that's when I first met him as a kid, and he was like a superhero to me as a kid. I recognized him just as this remarkable teacher and guide. His words of encouragement and just support he's always been for me, just always guided me through moments of self-doubt and inspired me to just strive for excellence in my ministry. I reflect on my first year of seminary. He had asked me, Randy, what kind of person do you want to be? And through his guidance and support, I've discovered that answer to that question. And I strive every day to live up in the vision that I shared with him so many years ago, where I continue to advocate for justice. And I continue now as Canon for Mission, continue to do a lot of work of not looking at becoming, but showing people the sparks of that beloved community and what it can really look like. So I just want to thank you all again for this. And I continue to celebrate his life and his stories, because they were not just anecdotes. They were pivotal moments that shape my understanding of ministry and my role as a servant leader. So I will always cherish his wisdom, his generosity, and just his unwavering belief in me and just being a gift beyond measure. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. Miriam, please go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to just come in and speak to my experience with Canon Rodman. He wasn't Canon Rodman yet, because I grew up in the UBE kind of way. Dr. Deborah Harmon Hines knows I was a kid really active in UBE as a youth representative to the board. And so for me, you know, hanging out with all of the other kids my age, you know, Faith and Ed's son, Teddy, and Bishop Turner's daughters, and the Rodman girls, and we were just, that was the crew. And so for me, I saw all of these folks as, you know, surrogate aunts, uncles, grandparents. It was, I didn't have the understanding of them in their ministry context. They were family. But yet, as I grew up in the church and you know, discerned my own call, and who knew that I would be doing this kind of work in ministry, I then understood, oh, this is what they were doing. This is who they were. This is who they became, and who, this is what was going on that I had no idea about because I was, 12. So for me, the legacy is so profound, and I'm thankful that I understand that now, but also most importantly, I'm thankful that I was surrounded by him and people like him that, who formed me and raised me up and gave me the understanding of what it meant to be a Black Episcopalian. And for my dad, my dad is Wilson Willard, and he's an Episcopal priest, and we needed that support as a family. UBE was such an important part of our family's life. So I'm just thankful for Canon Rodman's work and injustice and paving the way so that people like me and a lot of us who are on this call are doing our ministry in our way because of the things that he's done. So I'm just here with gratitude and a lot of thanks too for this space and the opportunity to hear other people's perspectives. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Are there any others who would like to share remembrances or words or raise any questions? We have about 9 minutes until the end, until we come to the end.
I just want to say a word about what Miriam said about, UBE's support of Black people in the Episcopal Church. And like I said, Canon Rodman is like a granddaddy. So the people who he, influenced were the people who made space, for me. And I'm thinking also about, the ethnic ministers in our church and the support that they get from UBE and encouragement and camaraderie, and how that really impacts the next generation of leaders. And I just hope that as we move into a new space in our church, and wherever 2024 takes us, that we don't lose sight of these spaces of encouragement, particularly for Black people, and for Black people, but also for our church, right? Because I think one of the stories that Canon Rodman shared with me was about how quickly when Jonathan Daniels was killed, that he was on campus, and there were people from the South who were seminarians, and they were being shunned by Northerners, and his sense of knowing what it means to be ostracized or pushed out or on the margin pushed him to invite those people to dinner, right? So when we make space for Black people to understand themselves within our church as Black Episcopalians, we are making space for our church to do greater self-understanding, right? To be ministered to from a different perspective, but also to join in the ministry of bringing the margins to the center and the center. I feel like that's kind of a played statement, but it's so true. And I think we cannot skip that step. We can't underfund UBE or underfund the ethnic ministries and think that we're going to get where we need to go or where we should be as a church. So that's just my, I don't know. One, Miriam, just thank you for pointing out the space that he created and the myriad of ways that space has allowed people to be ministers in our church.
Thank you.
And I see Preston, you have your hand raised. Feel free to unmute.
I did. Yes, thank you. My name is Preston Mears, and I have my wife, Lori, and Lori and I and Bunchy and Rod, we were together in seminary, and we have 3 children. They have 3 children, and they're all identical ages. And we spent a time growing up together, caring together, learning to be parents together, and being just loving, caring people. And what a gift. And aren't his wife and his daughters wonderful people?
Would have been nice.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And at this point, we'll turn it over to Canon Spellers for just some last words and to close us out with a prayer.
Before you go, Stephanie, Emily, can you explain to people how they can get this and both videos and this webinar?
Absolutely. So as you all have noticed, this is recorded. This is being recorded. If you would like a copy of the recording, if you'd like a link to view the recording, you can email, I'll go ahead and put it again in the chat. You can email edsinfo@eds.edu, and we can directly share the link with you as soon as Monday. I'm sorry, it's Wednesday, as soon as tomorrow. And in terms of watching the two videos, both the one that we screened tonight and then Reverend Hershey's extended interview with Canon Rodman, both of those are available at a link that Canon Spellers shared in the chat just a minute ago. I believe, and I can just reshare it again so it's just fresh in everybody's feeds. But that is the place to go to view both of these. And as Canon Spellers said, we encourage you to really share, to watch them and to share, and just continued remembrance and celebration of Canon Rodman and his ongoing legacy among us.
Stephanie.
Oh, thank you, everyone. This has been a beautiful evening and a beautiful offering. I was one of Ed Rodman's students at Episcopal Divinity School, and I was actually a brand new Episcopalian when I met him. So if you can imagine having your whole understanding of what it is to be Episcopal shaped by Ed Rodman, I was destined for trouble, I think, and just grateful beyond belief. I'm very aware that where I stand right now in the life of our church, serving as a canon to a presiding bishop, I feel very accountable. I feel deeply accountable to folks like Ed. And in fact, I feel deeply accountable particularly to Ed. I'm also really grateful for the films, and we did just place the link. Feel free to watch either or both. You will be inspired. The heritage film that you saw is one way of kind of meeting Ed in documentary style. Hershey's conversation with Ed, called Prophets Among Us, is a beautiful meditation really between generations, where she's kind of asking Ed, what do we need to know today to be the justice leaders and the Christians that we're called to be? And it's just a beautiful offering between the two of them. And so we've got that link in the chat box. Finally, I'm really grateful tonight for this space. I know that a number of us were at the memorial for Canon Rodman in Boston back in May at the cathedral. And then when many of us EDS alums were together at General Convention this summer, we kind of were looking at each other and saying, we need a space. We need a space. And we were saying this with Bishop Mark as well. We need a space to just remember and to be grateful together and to tell the stories and just to be quiet and thank God for Ed. And we mentioned to EDS that we would like a space like that. And so I want to make sure that folks know that the leadership of EDS responded by saying, well, then we'll create that space. So it feels right. It feels right that the school and the community that Ed gave so much to is even now creating this space to honor him. With that in mind, here is a closing prayer. And my closing prayer is actually going to be a reading of what I've gathered of Canon Rodman's aphorisms for activists. Let us pray. Dear ones in Christ, we walk in the footsteps of giants, and we are called to do much with whatever little we've got, and all for the love of Jesus. As you walk, keep in mind the wisdom of a giant, a prophet that we were blessed to know, or whose story we've been blessed to learn. Keep in mind these words of wisdom from Ed Rodman. Never believe your own propaganda. Don't try to leap a chasm in 2 jumps. There is nothing more dangerous than ignorance fraught with technicalities. Privilege is being able to choose what you want to hear. In terms of hope, despair is the coward's part. Choosing a ditch to die in is still suicide. And let there be peace among us. And let us not be instruments of our own or others' oppression. We hear you, Ed. We remember you, Ed. And we will live true to these words. In the power of the Spirit. Amen.
Amen and amen. And I see the chat resounding with amens. Thank you all so much for being, everyone who joined, thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you to everyone here on the screen for your leadership and all you shared, your tributes and your witness. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Go in
Thank
peace.
you.
Thank you.
Go in peace to love and serve the Lord and one another.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah.
For Ed. Mwah. Mwah. Mwah.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you, panelists. God bless. And thank you, EDS.
Steph.
Gotcha.